good start. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee. Unfortunately, Councillor Pentley, our chair, isn't available this evening, so as Vice Chair, I'll be sitting in his place instead. I will now call upon the clerk who will advise how the meeting will be run this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that we are trialling hybrid meeting arrangements with registered speakers and councillors who are not members of the Planning Committee having the option to join the meeting via Zoom, and are also live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and turn them off when finished. Please can attendees present in person refrain from watching the live stream or joining the Zoom link, as this will cause interference for our viewers. We're not expecting any fire alarm testing today. However, should the bells sound, please leave near the nearest fire exit down the stairs and gather in the car park opposite Tesco's. Bear with me. Please also ensure that your mobile phone and iPads are turned to silent. Each application will be dealt with in the following order. The Planning Officer will present the submitted application. At the end of the Planning Officer's presentation, the Planning Officer will outline the proposed recommendation in full. Any speakers registered to speak on the application will be invited to address the committee. This will be taken in the following order. Speakers against, Neighbourhood Forum representatives, any councillors who are not members of the committee, followed by speakers in support of the application. All speakers will have a maximum of 5 minutes each to address the meeting. This will be followed by questions from members and responses from the Planning Officer. Once questions from the committee have concluded, the Chairman will open the application for debate. At the conclusion of the debate, the Chairman will seek a proposer and seconder for the application. The proposal must be in full and include all information, such as conditions or reasons. The Chairman will then confirm with the Planning Officer if they wish to enter a period of summing up. Members, if at any point you leave the meeting for any reason during the consideration of an application, you will be unable to vote on that application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. First of all, are there any apologies or updates to the membership of the committee?
Chairman, we've received apologies from Councillor Pentley, our chair, as you've already explained, Councillor Manning and Councillor Kennedy.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other apologies at all?
No, Chair.
The next item on the agenda is the minutes. To confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of this committee held on 22nd of September 2022. Do we have a proposer? Proposed by Councillor Lewis, Barbara Lewis. A seconder? Councillor Dart. All those in favour? Are there any to the contrary? Okay, I declare those minutes duly confirmed. Next item on the agenda is number 3, declaration of interests. Do any members of the Planning Committee have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests on any of the items on today's agenda? Please raise your hand. Do any officers have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests on any of the items on today's agenda? Item number 4, are there any urgent items?
Chair, I have none.
Agenda item number 5 is to consider an application for 284 Totnes Road, Paignton, planning application 2022-0295. The clerk has confirmed those who have registered to speak upon entry to the meeting. I will therefore ask June Pagdin to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. The application for 284 Totnes Road, Paignton, is for a new vehicle wash and valet service station. And the application has been referred to Planning Committee because it is on land owned by Torbay Council. The site is shown on the screen there. It's a hard surface site on the north-east corner of the crossroads of the A380, which is Brixham Road, to the south and King's Ash Road to the north, and the A386, which is Totnes Road, going east-west across the bottom of that plan. That's all right. There. The eastern boundary is formed by a high wall along the side of the residential property at 282 Totnes Road. The northern boundary is formed by several walls that back onto a private lane that serves the rear of these properties, that front onto Totnes Road, and the three houses here. That's their only access, although the lane does come out onto Totnes Road at the far end here. There's a wire fence along the frontage of the site, along here. And the site is hard surface. There's a small triangular roof 2 or 3 metres high in the corner, and the vehicle access to the site is at this point. Onto King's Ash Road. It's marked with yellow hatching. So that's marked with yellow hatching here. And the vehicle access actually slopes down towards this junction point, but the rest of the site is flat. The site's in the built-up area of Paynton, and the crossroads junction just to the south here is known as Tweenaways Cross. It's a gateway site to Paynton from the west if you're coming from Totnes, and also if you're turning in that direction. And it's also on this main route from Torquay through to Brixham. It's considered to be a gateway site. Policy PNP 22 of the Paynton Neighbourhood Plan identifies the western corridor of Paynton, which means King's Ash Road and Brixham Road, as a location where they're looking for road improvements and also improvements to safe, active travel facilities. Tweenaways Cross is specifically identified as a major bottleneck with long traffic queues where improvements to traffic capacity is required in order to accommodate proposed growth, and part of the site is reserved for highway junction improvements. The policy also identifies the area as having less than satisfactory provisions for active travel at present, which means bus, walking and cycle travel. So the proposed development, let's just do a bit more, I'll show you the site a bit more. So there it is. Angled view, showing the traffic queuing at the junction. Here's a view from what you see when you're approaching on the A386 from Totnes. The site is open and has this small wire fence around it. This is pictures of the other corners at the junction. It hasn't come out particularly well, but the top one shows the opposite corner, which is a grass lawn slope with trees planted on it, with housing behind. This one is opposite side of King's Ash Road, where there's a housing development going ahead with a proposed landscape strip across the site frontage and retaining the mature trees. This corner is on the other side of Totnes Road and constitutes a curved retaining wall with some planting above. And this final one is a picture of the application site, which is open but empty at the moment. That's the existing layout. So the proposal. The proposed development is temporary, although the length of time wasn't specified. The applicant has said they have a lease potential for 9 years. So we could be looking at a 9-year lease for this temporary use for a vehicle wash and valet service station, which is in a use class of its own, commonly known as sui generis. The access point is from King's Ash Road here, which would have cars coming in and going out at the same point. The application states there's capacity for about 10 to 20 cars to park on the site, but likelihood is that there would be 10 on the site at any one time. There's a washing area on the eastern boundary and a dry internal valet area here. Presumably this is cars that are finished or waiting to be done. Both areas would be under canopies, which are about 4.5 metres high, steel framed with some form of canopy over. And around this boundary up to here, it's proposed to have a 2-metre high polycarbonate splash screen to prevent water running onto the pavement, interfering with pedestrians and cars. Surface drainage would be into this gully and into a silt and oil filter through to an attenuation tank and then dispersed into, say this clearly, the public foul sewer rather than any runoff, surface water runoff sewer, and certainly wouldn't be discharged into the lane there. Water that might run into that lane would just be rainfall from the land that slopes in that direction, which is already happening at present. There would be a private trade waste collection to the site. Although no employment details have been given, it's anticipated there will be jobs created by this proposal. And the hours of opening are proposed to be 9 till 6 in the winter and 9 till 7 in the summer on 7 days a week. So the main considerations for this proposal are the principle of the development, the impact on visual amenity for the area, impact on residential amenity for neighbouring occupiers, and the impact on highway safety. We also have consideration of ecology, biodiversity, drainage, and low carbon and sustainability. But I'll start with the principle. It's a temporary use of the site as a commercial car wash and valet station. The site was previously in commercial retail uses and more recently as a car park, although it's been empty for some years, and previous applications included an enhanced fence to protect the car parking, which was not permitted, and a proposal for advertising hoardings down at this end, which was withdrawn. But this site actually being within the built-up area of Paynton and having the potential to provide some temporary jobs, if not long-term ones, does comply with policy SS4 of the Torbay local plan and policy PNP1 area-wide of the neighbourhood plan. However, being a temporary proposal, the requirements of policy SS5 to provide high-quality employment accommodation not really apply on this particular site, so they're kind of neutral on that point. So there are no development plans indicating that the principle of the proposed use is not acceptable. So consideration has to be given to the other impacts and compliance with other policies of the development plan. Which brings me down onto visual impact. Policy DE 115 of the Torbay local plan is of particular relevance here, which highlights that new developments should make most of their opportunities to restore and improve gateways into the bay and to create focal points. This is considered to be a gateway on this principal junction. And policy PNP1C of the Paynton Neighbourhood Plan also states that development proposals should be in keeping with the surroundings and respecting scale, design, height, density and other aspects of design. So the proposal will be on a prominent gateway site at the entrance to the bay from the west, and also on the north-south route along the A380. The three other corners of the development have been quite carefully designed to be set back and to enhance the appearance with planting wherever possible. Right, the appearance of the site is currently open, and the proposed welfare cabin, canopies and perspex screen, as shown in the elevation drawings, are not considered to enhance the site or create a particular focal point in the short term or the longer terms. The use itself results in paraphernalia distributed within the site, and although I understand that the perspex screen is proposed to keep the site watertight, it's likely to retain water, soap and splashes, which could affect its appearance over time. This would be in contrast to recent efforts to improve the appearance of this junction, and is considered that would be unacceptable harm to the character and visual amenities of the locality, and contrary to the aims of policies DE1 of the local plan and PNP1C of the Paynton neighbourhood plan. In terms of residential amenity, the structures are not likely to cause loss of light or loss of outlook or create overbearing impact or to even create loss of privacy. However, there was one issue raised by the resident at 282 was the possible ingress of water to their property through the party wall. Party wall matters, strictly not planning matters, and would be dealt with through dealings between the owner and leasee of the site. The other aspect of this particular proposal with the car wash and valet is the potential for noise. Unfortunately, no noise assessment was submitted. It's accepted that the background noise levels are probably quite high in this location on this junction. However, there was still a hiatus in the information submitted, although this wasn't pursued due to other objections on visual amenity and highways. Which brings me on to highways. Yeah, so go back to more of a perspective on it. So policy TA3 of the local plan expects all development proposals to make appropriate provision to ensure that all sites are accessible and safe, and to satisfy the transport needs for the development. A local plan policy PNP 22 identifies the location as one where developer contributions toward road improvements costs would normally be sought, and improvements to safe active travel would also be sought. As Tweenways Cross is identified in the local plan as a major bottleneck with long queues, and improvement to traffic capacity is required in order to accommodate expected growth in the area, and there is currently unsatisfactory provision for active travel in this area. The plan states that developments which exacerbate traffic issues in this area without providing satisfactory design or other solutions are contrary to the objective of that policy. And the Highways Authority has objected to the proposed access because it encourages right-hand turns into the site across 4 lanes of traffic from King's Ash Road when you're coming from the north, and when you're when you're coming in from the south, and when you leave the site to head north. They considered that this would adversely impact traffic safety at the junction and in the vicinity. They did ask for extra information, like a revised access and egress layout. These weren't received. They also requested other information about length of stay and swept path diagrams for a large car, emergency vehicles and refuse servicing. However, we have had a late submission by email, which I believe all committee members have received, which reset out the applicant's traffic consultants' views on the site. So I'll just summarise them. You've probably read them, but I'll just summarise them to clarify. They've submitted some TRICS information, which is trip generation, and some personal injury and collision information during the course of the application. The PIC information related to the yellow cross area rather than to Tweenaways Cross. So it was very specific to that small part, whereas highways were expecting something from a wider area. And highways did respond to that additional information to say that what they were looking for in the revised access and egress layout hadn't been addressed fully, and they still required the other information that they'd asked for. So they still wished to register objection to the scheme on those points. In their summary, that it would add to existing congestion and undermine safety of the junction. Added to that, the expectations of the local neighbourhood plan to improving the road or improving safe active travel. The application was considered to be contrary to policy TA2 on the safety grounds and PNP 22 on other grounds. However, a parking layout could be, one of the objections was there wasn't a parking layout. That could be sought through conditions, so it's sort of a moot point. On ecology and biodiversity, I think we satisfied the ecologist that the wash water runoff wasn't going to be mixing with the surface water runoff into Clennon Valley. It was going to go into the foul sewer, and that was emphasised in the drainage assessment that was submitted with the application. On sustainability and low carbon issues, the proposal is in a sustainable location. However, it would support the use of cars as a mode of transport. It's not clear what the energy source would be for the proposed use. And policy ER2, which seeks that all developments reduce water being discharged into shared sewers. It's kind of moot on that because there isn't really anywhere else it could go. And that the applicants are proposing to filter the water before it's discharged. So overall, in conclusion, the proposal is acceptable in principle in creating some temporary employment. However, the scheme is considered to be visually intrusive and to result in adverse impacts in the street scene in a very prominent gateway to the Torbay area where policies specifically seek enhancements. The proposed use and vehicle access would adversely impact highway safety and congestion at an extremely busy junction, which is contrary to policy TA2. And in addition, the LPA has been unable to assess whether the proposal would adversely impact a neighbour amenity in terms of noise nuisance. Therefore, on balance, the proposal is not considered to be acceptable for the 3 reasons recommended or set out in the report. So, in summary, up to the top, the recommendation as set out in the report is for refusal of the application for those reasons.
Thank you, June. Is there Mary Allwood? I called Mary Allwood to address the meeting in support of the application. You have 5 minutes and the clerk will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. So feel free to start when you're comfortable.
Hi everyone, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Omar. Aram is Kurdish Iraqi and he's been in Brixham for 14 years. He's settled here and has 3 beautiful girls. In that time, he's been recognised for his many efforts with helping the community. He has many letters of thanks from local police as well as being nominated as a COVID hero. Aram has other family businesses, including car washes, and he contacts the job centre regularly to help put local people back into work. Aram has entered into an agreement to lease the site from Torbay Council, specifically with the intention to use it as a vehicle valet service, a use the council had said was appropriate, and that it is only on this basis that he pursued a planning application. The lease is for 9 years ongoing, and it is for that reason he has opted for lightweight canopies. They are 2 metres high, not 5. So the work needed is not intrusive. Aram would accept a 30-year lease if possible, but we were told from TDA that the lease will carry on as long as no lease terms are broken and rent is paid on time. There is no doubt that Aram will be helping local people back into employment. To begin with, he will be employing 5 members of staff. This car wash is to be eco-friendly and the only environmental friendly car wash in Torbay, and £1 from every mini valet or above is going to be donated to Paynton Zoo. I'd like to remind you that this is Tweenways Junction, which is a vehicle intersection and not a gateway site. This is very evident by the lack of features to each of the corner sites and how open the area is. The proposal is low-key, visually unobstructive, with lightweight canopies and cabins, all of which are reversible and do not require intrusive works or structures on the ground. Also, regarding visual impact, if the planning officer had communicated with us, we would have confirmed that we'd be more than happy to change materials used for the splashback wall and for the location of washing the cars. The cars could be moved to the front or side rather than the rear wall. The splash wall is to have pricing signs on it. The perspex could be changed for a different material. Aram is more than happy to do this. The officer's own report, section 3, states that the council have been unable to access the impact of noise, and yet it concludes there would be an unacceptable noise nuisance. How so? There is no basis behind such a conclusion, and the fact that the traffic movement at the intersection will no doubt create greater levels of noise. If necessary, noise levels can be taken and compared with similar valet businesses' activities to demonstrate this, which could be conditioned as part of an approval. A full professional traffic consultant evidence has been submitted using the latest traffic data, which confirms that vehicle movements would not impact the intersection and that there are no safety concerns. I have emailed a statement from the traffic consultant to all panel members. There is no basis for the officer's assertion, and this is seen only as her subjective opinion. That does not address the evidence presented in support of the application. May I please add that we feel in the determination of this application, the Council has not acted in accordance with Article 35. The application was validated on 17th of March, 30 weeks ago, and it's had a huge impact on Aram's business. All requests to the Planning Department for an update on the progress have been ignored, and only in the last 2 weeks have the officer requested agreement to an extension to the determination period. It has only been in the last 2 weeks where the officer contacted our architect and advised us to withdraw the application. One of the given reasons were that we would need water and electric. The water and electric is already on site, just waiting for reconnection. Any business would need this. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, I will now invite questions to the planning officer, and please may I remind members questions should only cover matters not raised in the presentation. Councillor Mills.
Yes, can I just verify what the height of the perspex screen would be, please?
Perspex screen would be 2 metres, so canopies would be 4.
And in one of the pictures, is it white? What colour? It looks as if it was. What colour is the perspex screen intended to be?
This is a photograph that was in the design and access statement
Right, so it's going to
by way
be
of illustration.
almost clear. Right, thank you very much.
Any further questions to the Planning Officer? Councillor Hill?
Thank you. It's concerning the timings, up until 7 o'clock on a Sunday as well. I find that somewhat unacceptable. I appreciate that this site is going to be noisy because it's on a major junction, but the idea of a car wash from, what was it, 9 in the morning till 7 in the evening, 7 days a week is just too much. Is there any consideration to reducing that timing?
Mary, unfortunately, he will need to go through the Planning Officer, the questions and things like that. Okay, thank you. Okay. June, can you reply to Councillor Hill?
This was written on the application form. The applicant may have other views to offer. I mean, I just take what's written on the application form as part of
It's
the
that I'm
submission.
questioning. It's what's written on the application form is why I'm questioning it, because I consider it to be unacceptable. And is there any way of reducing it?
That would be to be negotiated with the applicant. Yes. So that really is a.
Could be dealt with by condition.
It could be dealt with by condition. If the proposal's acceptable in all other aspects. The timing could be subject of a condition. If you want, hours of operation condition.
Okay, Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. The Speaker pointed out this afternoon that Torbay Council agreed that the site would be acceptable for this type of business before they proceeded with the application. Is that actually the case?
There wasn't any pre-application advice given by the planning department because I've checked. So not through planning. It wasn't advice from planning.
Okay, thank you for a minute. Thank you.
Councillor Dart.
Mine was just a continuation of that. Is it possible that the TDA gave advice and it didn't come from planning?
I'm getting a strong nod from the applicant on that. So in absence of any information that I hold, I defer to her.
Any other questions to the Planning Officer? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. The entrance and exit, how wide is that space? Please.
I'll show. Looking at the location plan, this measures 5 metres from one side to the other.
So that's about 16 foot in Old
Yes.
Valley, basically.
5 times 3, yes, 16.
Yeah.
And the canopies are cantilevered, so although it looks as though it narrows here, it would be possible to drive under the corner of it. Come in.
And the canopies are 2 metres high?
The canopies
So
are
that's-
no, the canopies are about 4 metres high.
I think the lady said they were 2 metres high.
I measured them from this drawing. I've measured them from this drawing. So this is just under 2 metres high. And this is 4 metres.
So, I mean, if the
It goes up
canopies,
to the windowsill of the upper floor of the house next door. That's about 4 metres.
but if they are only 2 metres high, it's only about 6 foot. You're not going to get any big vehicles underneath them anyway. But you said they're cantilevered, so they would go higher?
Cantilever just means they are secured below.
But they can't be raised and they can't be lowered.
I don't think it's not in the proposal that they will be raised and lowered specifically. I think they're intended to be at this height, which measures as 4 metres high.
So you're limited to what vehicles you can get underneath then?
You can get quite a lot under there. Some minibuses and Range Rovers and...
Not if it's 2 metres though. The lady's saying it's 2 metres, it's 6 foot.
If the screen is 1.8 metres high, and this drawing shows the canopies reach the top of the wall, which appears to be twice as high, it is 4 metres high. I have measured it using Adobe Acrobat.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dart.
What the hell is going on?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of my questions are in relation to what is a material planning consideration. Is the consideration of a previous application, can we consider that or no? There was an application in 2004 for a fence which was refused. Can we consider that? No. I'm assuming no. Is there a rationale for why that was refused? That's what I'm asking.
It was refused on visual impact. I think that says that in the report.
I'm referring to the previous application, one 2004. Is that what that says?
Yeah, I think I've summarised the reason
I may have missed that,
my
I'm
report.
sorry.
Yeah, that it was for visual impact. Down under site history.
Councillor Mills.
Yeah, I'd like to follow on from Councillor Lewis's question. The entrance, is there enough room for a car in and a car out at the same time? If it's 5 metres, I'm thinking about the width of a car parking space is just under 3 metres. I'm thinking, would there be enough space to get a car in and a car out at the same time? Or would there be sort of a log jam if one was coming out?
There should be room to get one car in and one car out. It would depend on the turning circles that they're performing, really. That's why I suppose highways, this must be why highways are asking for swept path analysis of if you had a car coming out on this side and turning round there, whether that was feasible. Certainly looks feasible to come in like that, quite a wide, almost straight entry, but getting back out again might be more difficult. But technically 5 metres is plenty wide enough. Yeah, parking
vehicles.
spaces on average 2.4 metres wide.
My other question is, presumably when you exit, it's only a left turn. Is that what's going to be? Or can they go across the 3 lanes of traffic? And going in, is it only a left entry, or do they go across 3 lanes of traffic if they're coming right? I don't know if that was in the report. I didn't notice it.
That's what the highway's concern is, that that those manoeuvres would take place, whether the site owner wishes them to or not, that customers may well do that, turn in right from when coming from the south and turn out right, heading north, coming out of the site.
So there wouldn't be a stipulation you have to turn left on exit, or you can only come in left on arrival?
There would have to be some change to the traffic regulation signs, is that right?
There would be nothing that would be enforceable that's associated with this application. So my understanding is that the applicant has indicated they would encourage customers to make the safer moves, but it wouldn't be enforceable if by the police or the highway authority if anybody chose to ignore it.
You're just relying on common sense, really, of people.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions to the planning officer? Councillor Dart?
I just have one on noise. Just looking through, I can't see anything on noise, but it does say that it would result in an unacceptable noise nuisance to surrounding premises. I just wonder what that was based on and whether or not we have information about what machinery may be used, whether there's jet washing or hoovering or whatever. If that's included in the report, I didn't see anything.
Yeah, there wasn't a noise assessment submitted, which is something you might expect with a car wash proposal next to residential use. the specific types of machinery weren't actually identified in the application, and the noise assessment hasn't been submitted. So in my report, it's a note of, if it was to be, I think it's the basis of lack of information. It's just an additional reason. It's something we would look for if we were minded to approve, if we didn't have the two major objections on visual impact and highways. So it's a third reason that hasn't been, or a third concern that hasn't been satisfied. So it's a reason for refusal on that sort of basis.
Okay. Yeah, and just one more thing as well. You did mention that during your presentation that the wall itself, the connection between the property and the wall and water ingress or water spraying in or whatever onto the properties, that's not something that the planning that we can consider, because that is separate, did you say? That's what I heard.
I think it's a party wall matter, which is between property owners and people operating uses within sites. So,
Mrs. Ormsby, would you like to?
So on that matter, so the particular point that Ms. Pagden was making was that water penetration. So if through regular splashing and spraying onto these walls, water penetrated through that party wall and caused damp in the adjoining house, that would be a civil matter between them because it's water through the party wall. If there was likely activity that was, if the walls were perhaps lower and we thought there might be spraying and actual direct consequences, then yes, that would be a material planning consideration. Going back to your earlier point about the comment about the fact that we're saying, I think you mentioned that the report said there would be an adverse impact of noise. The reason for refusal says it could result in an unacceptable noise nuisance because we haven't got the information to enable us to make that assessment, and it's a reasonable concern having regard to the things you mentioned, power washes, vacuuming, etc. that is noisy, but with that background noise levels also being high, it's not possible to say definitively, but without that would be a reason for refusal as set out.
Sorry, and just one follow-on question. Actually, this is in relation to the items that are supposedly abut the wall. The canopies are, I'm assuming, not attached to the wall, and the sort of base with the toilet and everything else, I'm assuming that's not attached to the wall either. I couldn't tell if it was slightly away from it or if it was like right up against it or not. Just assuming that obviously if it's not a planning consideration or material consideration for us in terms of water ingress or into the property, then anything being drilled into it or up against it is also not either.
The welfare cabin there's definitely a gap between the welfare cabin and that side wall, and the canopies would not be secured to the wall. Is that right? They'd be freestanding but set here, close to the wall. Resting up against it but not joined to it.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions to the planning officer? Okay, I now open the application for debate. Is there any debate at all? Councillor Hill?
Thank you, Chairman. When we had the site visit, albeit by Zoom, we all had similar concerns, which was the exit from the site and later on entrance from the site. And I can't see that they've been resolved here. You're having this meeting now and talking to others. And my other concern is, as I said earlier, is the noise level that's going to be the infringement on the locals. 7 days a week, 9 till 6 in the summer, 7 in the winter. And for me, that's just all unacceptable. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. My concern really is the left turn into the site. because you've got the traffic coming down King's Ash, and you would turn left into the site, you've got the traffic lights which are not that much further on. So you'll be having people that are queuing up at the traffic lights to maybe turn left or go straight through. And there'll be people queuing to get into the car wash. So how are you going to distinguish who's queuing up for what? Because there's no spare lane there to distinguish that. That's one problem. And also, you've got the development right opposite, which will be finished soon, I suppose. So you'll have more traffic congestion there as well. So it's the safety issues that worry me more than anything. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mills.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce what Councillor Lewis has just said. You will not be able to distinguish somebody turning left to go down Totnes Road or somebody waiting to get into the car wash, which is, you then, if somebody's waiting to get into the car wash, the car behind might think, oh, the road's clear, so they'll cut out into the other lane, which could be a potential hazard. So I agree with what Councillor Barbara Lewis has said, unusually. Thank you.
Any more debate at all? Councillor Dart?
I think my concern is over what's missing. There doesn't appear to be enough information about highways, about the impact on the roads, or the layout, and about how the cars will manoeuvre in and around the area. There's also then information missing too much, I think, on the impact it will have in terms of sound. I think, obviously, having... It was a fish and chip shop, I believe, at one point, and then that was knocked down, so it's clearly had stuff on the site before. And I remember when I was much younger, it being knocked down and being empty, and it has been for a long time. So clearly something needs to go there. I don't think necessarily this is actually a bad idea. I think in principle it's probably a good idea to have something like this there. It's probably the least impactful of businesses that could go there. But I think more information is needed so that we can, the planning committee at least, can be more informed, and a decision can be made perhaps when that information has been provided. When that happens, I don't know, but that I think is probably the next step so that we can make a better, more informed decision.
Okay, if there's no more debate, do I have a proposal? Councillor Hill.
Refusal on the grounds as laid out by the council officers.
I would like to second that, please. Thank you.
So seconded by Councillor Mills. Is there any final summing up from the planning officer? So we're all quite clear on the proposition. It's been seconded. So all those in favour of the proposal, as put forward by? Yeah, sorry. All those in favour of the proposal? Any to the contrary? Okay, so the planning application is refused. Just pause for a minute or so. Okay, we're all ready to go again. Next item on the agenda is to consider an application for St Edmunds, Victoria Park Road, St Mary Church, Torquay, planning application 2022/0741. The clerk has confirmed those who have registered speak upon entry to the meeting, and I will therefore ask June Paglin to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for, the address is St Edmund's Care Home, Victoria Park Road, St Mary Church in Torquay. And the application is for construction of 2 single-storey, 1-bedroom temporary living spaces and associated landscaping, including works to the existing car park. The application is referred to Planning Committee because it's on land owned by Torbay Council. Okay, the site is a grassed area in the grounds of St Edmund's. St Edmund's is a care home located close to Torquay Football Club. Oh. Come on, mouse. Can't get the mouse to work this time, sorry. The red mouse. It's control out.
The highlighted thing.
Yeah,
Control out.
didn't work.
Control L. Try Control L again. Control.
Nothing's happening.
One and then the other. No, get rid. Just right click. No.
I'm going to do this. Here we are. Right, it works on this one. Here we go.
Laser pointer, yeah.
Sorry about that. It's a new toy. A laser pointer. Okay, so is it between the Torquay Football Ground and St Mary Church Road? It's at this site here. So St Edmund's is this T-shaped building. It's a care home and centre for community care on Victoria Park Road. It's owned by Torbay Council, and the care centre is 3 stories, finished in grey brick. It's got 3 small car parks, one here, and one at the back, and landscaping on the road frontages. On the south side here, a temporary housing unit recently gained planning permission in 2020, and the application site is this area here. It covers about 120 square metres on the road frontage of Victoria Park Road. It's fronted with a low timber fence and currently contains a set of waste bins which have shown up on the Google Earth photograph. These are used by the care centre and by peripatetic staff who use a particular clinical disposal bin in there, and they're contained in a protective wire enclosure. The site is to the north east of the vehicle entrance, which is from Victoria Park Road, and it's adjacent to number 8, which is a single-storey end of terrace residential property with a front garden and a rear garden, which is also enclosed by the same low wooden fence to the front and by a hedge to the rear. On the opposite side of Victoria Road are the rear of houses which front onto St Mary Church Road, There's a variety of open parking areas, small buildings and amenity spaces. So the site is in the built-up area of Torquay. It's close to the Plainmoor local shopping centre, which is just around here, and outside of the community investment area. The proposal is for, again, temporary planning permission, this time for 5 years, to use this piece of land for moving on accommodation under the government's Rough Sleeper initiative, and involves the temporary construction of 2 single-storey, 1-bedroom dwellings. The dwellings are modular buildings. Each one has an internal gross internal area of 24 square metres, and contains habitable space, shower, WC, and kitchen counter. The proposal involves, I'll give you site layout, a shared access area, front doors facing Victoria Park Road. The external materials are to be larch timber cladding with an eaves height of about 3.4 metres and a monopitch roofs which have a full height of 4 metres, which is the same as the bungalow adjacent. There's provision within the site for bin storage and some space for cycle parking, the exact form of which is not yet specified. There's a landscaping area to the front and a landscaping area to the rear. The existing care home bins would be relocated to the south side of St Edmunds, which I can show you later if that question arises. The submitted supporting statement sets out that the accommodation would be provided for eligible people, that is, people who are already sleeping rough or who are in emergency accommodation or at risk of sleeping rough. Torbay Council would manage the lettings, and the occupants would be given temporary accommodation for between 2 weeks and 2 years, while other support services in the area assist them in moving on. The key considerations for this, again, are principal development, visual impact, residential amenity, impact on highways, ecology and biodiversity, flood risk and drainage, and low carbon sustainability. On the principle of development, the proposal is for housing for people in specific need, and is within the built-up area of Torquay, so complies with policies H1, SS3 and policy H6 in developing supported living in new forms of supported living for people with specific needs. The 2 units would help to contribute towards the Council's housing land supply as well, to a small extent, but more importantly, or in a more focused way, would assist with the Council's programme for providing housing for homeless people, and would be part of the Moving On scheme supported by central government funding, and would provide a high quality alternative compared to what the occupants currently experiencing. The occupants would be provided with additional support where necessary through local services, including the community care services that operate from St Edmunds House. And the properties would be managed by Torbay Council. Leases would be flexible in length, with the aim of the occupants moving towards more permanent housing, and those needs would be assessed on an ongoing basis. So while the accommodation quality would be high, the standards for permanent housing would not be met, in that internal area is required by policy DE3 to be 37 square metres for a single person whereas this proposes 24. And the amenity space outside is adequate, but there is no parking. The parking standards aren't being met. So on that basis, it's recommended that a condition be applied restricting the use to the units as moving on accommodation for people at risk from rough sleeping. So in principle, and subject to that recommendation, the proposal's consistent with the relevant policies of the Torbay local plan. So it also falls to be considered against other policies of the local plan, which brings me on to the visual impacts. So it's considered that the siting scale and design would not result in unacceptable harm to the character or visual amenities of the locality, in that the proposed dwellings would be small scale, relatively low in height, not exceeding the ridge height of the existing single-storey terraces on Victoria Park Road. A boundary fence would be retained, although obviously a space would be made in it to provide access to the units. The actual units are prefabricated and assembled on site, so they will look very much like the one that's already been provided around the corner. A modern and contemporary design which differs to some extent from many of the older buildings in the surrounding area, although there is quite a diversity, and the southwestern part of St Edmund's House and previously approved unit do include timber cladding with a low timber fence. The proposed single-storey buildings will be much smaller in scale than St Edmund's House. Okay, so the fencing would be retained wherever possible, and an area of planting would be provided on the front of the site together with an entrance area with a gravel surface. Implementation of the landscaping and details of it can be secured by condition, and that is recommended. And included in a condition is a recommendation that the site be restored to its previous condition following their removal in the future. So overall, the proposal is felt to be in accordance with policies DE1 of the local plan and TH8 of the Torquay neighbourhood plan in that respect of visual amenity. On residential amenity, I've already raised the matter of the internal space standards. Although the amenity space standards are met, 10 square metres per unit would be provided on the site in total, and adequate refuse and recycling bins would be provided on the site. I have got an illustration of what a bin store may look like, and being a timber clad with opening front doors if that question arises, and that a condition is recommended that is provided, details of those are submitted, and that the facility is provided before first occupation. In terms of the neighbouring occupants, the proposal's unlikely to cause any loss of light or any overlooking or any loss of outlook or overbearing impact because of their positioning. With the first unit would be set level with the frontage of number 8, and the second unit would be positioned quite a distance away, and although it would project forward 2 metres, it wouldn't result in any loss of outlook or light to number 8, and it's considered to be acceptable in that respect. So in terms of highways, the requirement is normally for one on-site parking space for each dwelling unit. However, the housing team in the application submission have expressed that the proposed occupants would be extremely unlikely to own any cars, and also quite unlikely to own a bicycle, although that may change during the course of their use of the properties. So no parking is provided for the units themselves, but their proposal doesn't involve any loss of on-site parking for the care centre as it is. So all the existing parking spaces would be retained, including on-street parking for residents in the area. In terms of ecology and diversity, I think we're talking about a small grassed area being turned into a planted area, which, subject to conditions securing details and implementation, probably represents an enhancement of that site in biodiversity terms. The flood risk assessment shows that the site is too small for infiltration, so controlled discharge to the public sewer would be used from the unit roofs for surface water, and a foul sewer for foul drainage. In terms of sustainability and low carbon, the access and design statement sets out that the homes are designed using passive house principles, so they should be economical to heat and provide a good quality environment. The construction materials are prefabricated renewables, and construction takes place on the site following ground preparation. So the initial build can take 1 or 2 days, and then the fitting out takes 6 to 8 weeks afterwards. So the design and access statement also specifies the hours of work. So a condition is recommended, reinforcing that the hours of construction are complied with. So, in conclusion, on planning balance, the proposal offers temporary affordable housing solution that be managed by Torbay Council as a means of short-term residential accommodation for vulnerable people. It would therefore accord with the development plan aspirations relating to housing delivery and specifically to the provision of housing for people in need of care and support. Although the dwellings would be smaller than the space standards set out in policy DE3 and would not accord with guidelines for on-site vehicle parking for dwelling houses set out in policies TA3 and the Appendix F of the local plan, it's considered that the quality of the proposed residential accommodation would be acceptable given the intended occupancy cohort, temporary use and short-term leases, and that the proposal would not result in significant impact on highway safety or amenity that would not be outweighed by the social benefits of the proposal. It is therefore recommended for approval, and I have to read out this extended recommendation. Approval subject to the planning conditions outlined in the report, with final drafting of planning conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, and the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, June. There are no registered speakers for this item, and I will now invite questions to the Planning Officer. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I see that the proposed new dwellings will see the removal of the bin storage area. Where is the new bin storage likely to go?
The proposal is that they would go here.
So is that going to be the removal of some car parking space then?
No, it would sit on the grassed area.
Oh, is that a grassy area, is it?
Grass, I think there's
It looked like
tree
a shadow.
I think it's a tree in the middle, a small bush or something, and then a hedge around the outside. But this green area here is where they're intending to put them, so it's easily accessible from here by the refuse vehicles.
Okay, so there'll be no loss of current car parking?
That's the proposal, yes.
Okay.
And indeed, the specifications in terms of appearance and exact positioning can be secured through the recommended condition.
Yeah, I mean, I know that obviously we're not gearing up for car parking spaces for the residents, but we do need it for the staff that are attending the centre. So my fear would be that can't afford to lose any spaces because we don't want them to be parking all around the streets, etc. And, you know, where car parking is at a premium.
That's right, yes.
Thank you. Got another one. Again, it's regarding the bin storage. You showed us a great picture with it all clad in the same materials of the cladding of the dwellings. Is it possible that we can condition that? I don't think it says in so many words in the conditions, I've just looked, that the bin storage will look like that to match the dwellings, if it gets approved today, of course.
We can ask them to submit that as part of the discharge of condition application.
Yeah, I would like it
expressing that you were in favour of it.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think it should be included in the conditions. We should, you know, if it was approved, because I think it all, you know, it looks splendid the way it is. It would be a shame if it didn't turn out to be like that.
Do we need to amend the condition then?
If I could just come in. So condition 7 requires that prior to first occupation of the development hereby permitted, details of the proposed refuse and recycling bins enclosure and their location on the site shall be submitted to and agreed by the LPA and then provided in accordance. So that enables us to effectively request those details to be formally submitted, and then we could approve them. Or if they've already submitted them, we could say that the waste recycling facilities need to be provided as indicated in that drawing.
Yeah, I'd like that condition.
Yeah.
To change the condition.
Yeah.
Thank you. Should it be approved?
Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the bin storage, if you're moving them from the front, where the 2 pods are going to go, moving them back there, you're taking up that grassed area. Are there any other grassed areas that people can use? If you're removing the grassed area?
I'm not sure how much amenity it was used. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure how much that was used as an amenity space, but I think the sky view gives a better idea. I think, yeah, there's grassed areas there. There are some planting there and some planting there. I'm not sure what this was more of a visual amenity. Yes, it's fenced off, so it was more of a visual amenity than a functional amenity space.
Because I mean, if you've got more, right, it's probably only 2 more people, but then you're taking away some of the green area that they can go into, and most of that is just hedging, if you look.
Yes.
So there's no real area.
Oh, right, within the development itself. Okay. Look at the site layout, or the more detailed layout. So, yeah, this is coming in from here. This would be re-fenced.
So how big is that? How big is that area?
This area
from
here.
The fence to the actual first dwelling.
That area.
Yeah.
It's exact measurement. It's a couple of metres, because this is set back 5.5 metres. No, this is 5.5 metres. It's about 2 metres deep and 6 or 7 metres wide. And then there's this decking area here. And this landscaped area at the back, which is more for amenity value rather than functional. So it's tight, but it does provide an area to sit and some planting to soften it.
Okay, thank you.
Separate from the bin and bike area.
I'm finished yet. Sorry.
Well, go on.
Thank you. At the site meeting this morning, I asked you about the bungalows that are adjacent to that. whether they were part of the care centre or whether they were private. You said you'd find out.
Yes, I did. I did try to find out from the housing department. I'm not sure if anyone else has more local knowledge, but I believe the form of the development suggests that they were part of a development together with other units up here, and that people might be receiving some sort of support, assisted living.
I have a feeling they are private. I used to go to school with a lad at Westlands who lived in one of the bungalows at the end, on the other end, so I think they're privately owned just now.
Can you use your microphone, please?
Apologies.
Okay, I think if we're talking about sort of the two bungalows, I think they're used by. I had a friend who lived there who's had disabilities, and I was understood it was sort of like housing association at that time. But I'm going back a few years, but that's my understanding.
So they're not actually part of the care centre. That's what I'm trying to get at.
No.
They're not part of the care centre.
No. Councillor Mills.
A couple of questions, and I don't actually think it's going to be a planning question, but I'll ask it anyway. You say that Torby Council are going to manage the accommodation and that their residents would be there from 2 weeks to maximum of 2 years. How will that be monitored? Will somebody visit every 2 weeks? Or, I mean, how will Torby Council check that everything is okay there? I know it's not a planning issue, but I think it's an important issue.
They'll be managed by Torbay Housing Department, effectively, who will be responsible for selecting the people to live in them. And obviously it will be an ongoing programme because of the nature of that sort of moving on, that they no doubt will be working with social workers, etc. So yes, I mean, you know, it isn't specifically well, the management is relevant, you know, because we wouldn't be approving these as open market dwellings for normal use because they're too small. They don't meet our standards. It's only because of the fact that they are this moving on accommodation that we feel that that it's acceptable. So it is relevant to planning. But yes, the council's housing department will be very much involved with the occupants and social services as well, and that's how they will be monitored.
Right. My next question is, I mean, they may be small, but compared to a shopfront doorway, they're quite good. My second question is, 2 months to about 10 weeks for them being built. That's what you said, wasn't it? They'll come on site and it'll take maybe 8 weeks for them to be structured. So that in actual fact will be, it's not really a question, I'm sorry, minimal disruption to the other residents. It'll be a 10-week complete from start to finish. Is that about right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was set out in the design and access statement that because they're prefabricated, they're very quick to assemble. So once they've done the preparatory groundwork with the drainage, it takes 1 or 2 days to put up the framework and the roof on, and then 6 to 8 weeks to fit out. Yes.
And my last question is, which I don't think you'll be able to answer, the accommodation, you mentioned there's already one round the corner in Victoria Park Road, one that was it 2020, I think you said? Has there been any issues with that, do you know? I'm pushing you in an awkward position, I'm sorry, but I just wonder because...
I've had one, the application, I think it was in the design and access statement, a statement by the occupant who was very pleased with it. And then I think there was some...
What I meant was any of the residents living around that already one building, has there been any issues because obviously they're previously homeless people living in it? Has there been any problems with residents who are not living in it? I know you probably can't answer, but I just was curious to see if there'd been any animosity.
The responses to public consultation referred to parking and where would the bins be relocated to. So there hasn't been much response in terms of sort of antisocial behaviour or an adverse impact in that respect.
So what they were saying is nobody said, we've had one round the corner, they've been a nightmare, we don't want any more. That's...
They haven't said they've been a nightmare.
Okay, well, I just wanted to know if there have been any issues. That's fine, thank you. Sorry.
If there's no more questions from councillors, I will open it for debate. Any debate at all? Okay, Councillor Dart.
I think that's finally a government policy I can agree with. In truth, I can't really see any issue with the proposal, but maybe just to sort of round it off by saying I think we ought to do everything we can to make sure that people who haven't necessarily had the best life are given the best opportunity to get on with a bit of dignity, and this hopefully will help them do that. So I'm in favour.
Is there any more debate? Okay, Councillor Dart, would you like to make that as a proposal?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose.
Do we have a seconder, Councillor Mills?
I'm happy to second that proposal, thank you.
Can I just check that the proposal and the seconder is as per set out in the report? And
yes,
with Councillor Thomas's condition with regards to the design of the
absolutely bin. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that is.
Okay, all those in favour? Are there any to the contrary? It is duly passed, confirmed. Thank you. And that concludes the planning meeting for this evening. Thank you very much indeed for coming along.